like to welcome you to the Baseline to Baseline podcast/show.
It's steps to success rather than failures.
But it seems like right now it's just not working.
You've never seen a center like him who could do the amount of things that he can.
So I think the Celtics probably are the ones to beat if they all stay healthy. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Baseline to Baseline with Alister Albert. I am your host, of course, Alister Albert himself. And of course, this is the video podcast which is bringing the Caribbean to the world via the NBA, which is my little slogan, which I like to use. And, we're here for another episode. And, I'm really happy to be able to do another one here. We did a really fun episode last time when episode 13, where we spoke about the NBA landscape as in its current format. We did a little talk about the trade deadline, the all-star reserves that were chosen, what were my selections based on that. And also we debuted the Bétiz of the week section of this podcast or segment. And then we did a little footnote. So, same structure, same format and everything for this one today. And the topics we're definitely going to kind of discuss today, I think are three really, NBA fanatic oriented. I think, most people are really glued onto, big headlines and everything. But, if you're a really diehard fan of the NBA, I think these topics are here for you. We're going into a little detail in a certain type of way. First topic, of course, on the day, we're going to talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers. We go sometimes through the season and we wonder who are pretenders and contenders. And, the Cavaliers right now have been on a really good hot streak in the NBA, the hottest team in the league, actually, winning the last 6 games, in impressive fashion, I would say. And then we're going to move on to the next topic of, a star coming up in this league, I would like to say. Brandon Miller, rookie of the Charlotte Hornets, who's kind of playing really well the last couple of days, weeks, I'd say. And, he's kind of bringing himself, I think, into the Rookie of the Year conversation. I kind of think, he's a little further behind the two front runners, but we'll get into that in a little bit. And the third topic, of course, is the Kawhi factor. You've seen, what the dominance of Kawhi Leonard could do for a team in the NBA. We've seen it happen with 2 championships, and we've seen him doing it right now for the Clippers, who are probably enjoying the best stretch of their franchise's career in terms of, just how they're producing on the court. So these are our 3 topics for today. No promo reads today, unfortunately, but of course, if you watched the first episode, you saw me do a little promo read for Bernadette's book, Bernadette Albert, Ruth Dawson, and Dan Lomax with the event planning and management book. So, just keep that one in mind, but no promo reads today. We're going to try to get through this episode a little quicker and end a little sooner today, because I want to kind of really get into these topics to a level of detail, but not too long. Okay. All right. So first one, the Cleveland Cavaliers. This team over the last few weeks has really shown to be, a bit of a thorn in the side of teams that they play against. Of course, the star Donovan Mitchell, another all-star selection to his cap, feather in his cap, and he's been playing remarkable basketball over the last 5-6 weeks, I'd say. The Cleveland Cavaliers are 19-4 in their last 23 games since December 6th, and to start off the year 2024, 14-2. And like I said earlier on, when we brought this segment to a start, this episode to a start, have the longest winning streak in the NBA right now of 6 wins. And yeah, the Cleveland Cavaliers have been really, really great in the last couple of games, and it's showing. Their health has come back. We have a healthy roster finally. Evan Mobley is back. Darius Garland is back. Jarrett Allen is playing. Karis LeVert is on the bench doing what he needs to do, and of course you have Donovan Mitchell just going crazy right now over the last. The games from December 16th, he's been averaging 28.9 points per game, 4.9 rebounds, 7.7 assists on 49% shooting and 36% from 3-point range. Now, the Cleveland Cavaliers, I think, are in a really tricky position because every time, well, since LeBron James has left, they've been in a situation where they just kind of been holding pattern. Either they're kind of ending up in the lottery, or they've reached the playoffs as they did last season and just a bit have disappointed. We saw Donovan Mitchell last year put up 71 points in a game, but that didn't amount to anything in terms of the end of the season where, they went out really early in the playoffs. And you're kind of wondering, are they on this trajectory again? Are they going to be a disappointing team in the NBA playoffs this year? And it's an interesting one. And I think every season, every team has an opportunity to do really good. And, like I've shown in my power rankings the last couple of, in the last episode, my updated power rankings for before the All-Star break starts, I had them ranked here as the number 13 team, in the power rankings, just behind the New York Knicks, behind the Milwaukee Bucks, the Boston Celtics of the East, and of course the Philadelphia 76ers, of course, who would drop from the second place in my updated rankings because of the Joel Embiid injury situation. But it's been interesting to see how the Cavs have kind of progressed over the last couple of weeks with Donovan Mitchell's play, like I said, and they're just going in a really good direction where I think they could be really competitive. And of course, with the Milwaukee Bucks playing a little bit as shaky as they have, with Doc Rivers coming in, being their new coach and not really living up to the mark in terms of their defensive efficiency as you would expect Doc Rivers to bring to this team. But of course, you had to kind of give them a little bit of time. Doc Rivers just came in, taking over for Adrian Griffin, and he hasn't had a full training camp. Learning on the fly is a thing. Sometimes it takes a little bit of time, and not every team with just a level of talent will just click immediately. And of course, this is exacerbated by a team who has a defensive struggles for the start of the season, especially after trading Drew Holiday. They, one of their best perimeter guards who kind of filled in many spots on the floor, very versatile in terms of his defensive capabilities, alongside Brook Lopez and Giannis Antetokounmpo, of course. But it's crazy to think that, I believe the Cleveland Cavaliers right now and the way they're playing, they could actually be really problematic for a team like the Milwaukee Bucks. You have, of course, Darius Garland, who's for the season is averaging 19, 2 and 5. He's only played 24 games though, so that's kind of one of the serious situations for them where, he hasn't been healthy, but you'd like to think as he's back in the lineup, he will probably be helping them get to a level of consistency in terms of being on the court and everything. Evan Mobley, of course, he was out in the season for quite some time with injury himself, and he's averaging 15.7 points per game, which is a career high for him, 10.2 rebounds, and he's only played 25 games this season himself. And just looking up at the power rankings and looking up at the records, I think the Cavs right now in the NBA, they're something like the second or third in the East. Just looking quickly at they're the second in the East, just behind the Boston Celtics. And they have momentum right now. Like I said, 6 straight wins, and they've come in impressive fashion the last couple of games. And I think it's one of those teams, realistically, especially when you think about the types of teams that they could go against. If you're looking at the Milwaukee Bucks, if the Cavs had to play the Milwaukee Bucks, I think they're actually a really surefire team that could give the Milwaukee Bucks problems because of their defensive inefficiencies, right? You have Damian Lillard and Michael Beasley starting in the front court. Of course, you'll probably put someone like Jay Crowder on or someone like Donovan Mitchell to kind of slow him down as much as possible, a bigger, taller body to try to body him up. But this is a guy who could put up 30 points really easily. Like we said last year, he put up 71 points in a game. And these guys have shooting ability and a skill concentration which is unlike anything we've seen in the evolution of the game. Their 3-point shooting, especially the outside shooting, becoming just better over the last few years. So I think the Cleveland Cavaliers, they're a funny one because right now, like I said, they're second in the East. Milwaukee's third, and they're kind of trending downwards with the losses that they've been having, losing their last 2 games against the Jazz and who was it? Who did they play last night? they played the Phoenix Suns, and yeah, losing their last two games, in disappointing fashion. And yes, Damian Lillard didn't play last night against the Phoenix Suns, but it's just a trend that's kind of going. That's a little bit concerning. So teams like the Cleveland Cavaliers could take this little path, a little opening, like they have done in the standings, to kind of leapfrog teams like the Milwaukee Bucks, who are championship contenders and are now looking up at a team like the Boston Celtics, who many people think could actually win the championship this year. And I still think the Cavaliers probably have a little bit of work to do when it comes to being able to beat a team like Boston. But momentum is quite a thing, and the way that Donovan Mitchell is playing, Evan Mobley, like I said, is back in the lineup alongside Jarrett Allen, providing that defensive and rebounding prowess that they bring when they're on the floor. They could pose quite a lot of problems for a team that is fielding Kristaps Porzingis. But like I mentioned in my last episode, I'm really concerned about his health, and Al Horford, who's aging, and them not having anyone else in the off their bench who I'd say would command a level of respect, and players might actually be really really respect because of their capabilities. There's no Robert Williams on this team anymore. So they're relying on guys like Luke Cornett and Ketter, and look out for the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think they're a team on an upward trajectory. Like I said, I have them 13th in my power rankings, my updated power rankings for the preseason from a couple of weeks ago. But considering how well they're playing, and how badly a team like the Bucks are playing, they're right there with the New York Knicks in terms of coming up and providing this level of competition that might be very exciting to watch in the playoffs. So look out for the Cleveland Cavaliers, Donovan Mitchell and his whole crew. JB Bickerstaff, the coach for this team. This is a team that's hungry. Donovan Mitchell, coming from Utah, has had disappointment upon disappointment. And I think this year, with the injuries to Joel Embiid, with the way the Bucks are playing, if they don't get their act together, would want to try to really push themselves in a position to contend and maybe even get to Eastern Conference Finals, the first appearance without LeBron James. So look out for the Cleveland Cavaliers. All right, so that's topic number one. The second topic I want to really get into now is Charlotte Hornets rookie Brandon Miller. And it's really cool to see what's going on with him right now. He has been playing amazingly for the last for the start of the year. He's been averaging 19 points, 4 rebounds, 2.4 assists, shooting 44% from the field and 37% from 3-point range. Over the last 12 games, however, as at this date, today is the 7th of February, the last 12 games, he is averaging 23.6 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 2.7 assists, shooting 49% from the field and 41% from 3-point range. Now, of course, I think most people's choices or the rookie race right now is really between Victor Wembanyama and for the San Antonio Spurs and Chet Holmgren with the OKC Thunder, the two 7-footers who have a bit of a real disliking for each other and really go hard at each other. And I think it's this budding rivalry that we're going to love to see over the next couple of years. I think they're the front runners. Brandon Miller now, over the last 12 games, like I've articulated, how he's been playing a lot more confidently, a lot more maturely, playing not like a rookie just wanting to make a mark, but a rookie wanting to try to make a difference to his team. He's been playing like a man on a mission, not necessarily to win the Rookie of the Year, but to show that, I could be a really good cornerstone for the team. And of course, he was drafted third or second, what was it? Third or second in the NBA draft last season. And, he has been absolutely, up and down to start, his career. And like I said, the last 12 games, he's been playing remarkable basketball. And, they need him. We have LaMelo Ball, who has been injured the last couple of games. I think he's missed the last 6 games for the Charlotte Hornets. And it's been difficult when you don't have your floor general who is the box office attraction for the Charlotte Hornets. Let's make no mistake about that. But him missing from the lineup, and you're having to rely on Ish Smith, who's actually starting for the Charlotte Hornets right now, and Miles Bridges, who of course has been playing remarkable basketball himself for the Charlotte Hornets, and who has kind of been keeping these guys not necessarily in games because they haven't been really competitive, and they've had like a really horrible record to start the year. But they are 10-39 to this point, 49 games in, and they're 10-39. And Miles Bridges, of course, he missed the first 10 games of the season because he had his his little domestic violence issue, legal matters that he had to deal with. And he's just been Miles Bridges. He's kind of, credit to him. He's held down the fort. Steve Clifford, the coach of this team, at the start of the season said this is probably the more talented team, or the most talented team he's coached since he's been a coach in the NBA. And he was really looking forward to seeing what this team could do with LaMelo Ball coming back healthy, and Miles Bridges coming back into the fold, a talent like Brandon Miller, Nick Richards, Mark Williams, centers, they're very young centers, trying to push this team through. And of course, they've just floundered, as they played, much better high level competition. And they've really been on a downward slope, about to enter the draft lottery again. And it's disappointing for them. But Brandon Miller has really been, apart from Miles Bridges, Brandon Miller has been the bright spot for the Charlotte Hornets. And I think everyone needs to commend this guy, just coming in and playing as hard as he has, averaging the amount of points that he has over the last few games. And you think that maybe he's kind of gotten past any rookie wall or any rookie slowdown that would affect his production and his confidence playing on an NBA court with NBA stars. He's seen and played most of the stars now. And, any moment of awe and wondering whether or not I could hang with these guys is out of the window. This is him now trying to solidify his career and solidify him being a cornerstone piece for the Charlotte Hornets. Of course, the Charlotte Hornets right now are probably sellers in the trade market. We are coming up to the trade deadline, and we have players on this team. We've already seen one move, Terry Rozier moving over to the Miami Heat. Like we said, they still own the rights to Kyle Lowry. They're probably going to try to work out on maybe some buyouts for him, or potentially trading him to acquire assets back that they believe that would be beneficial to the team. And they're going to be sellers in this market. Miles Bridges is attracting a lot of attention as well, in the NBA circles, in the NBA markets, in the GM offices, where he's been linked to the Phoenix Suns. I think the Los Angeles Lakers, I think at one point had said that they like him. The Dallas Mavericks are trying to throw some feelers out there for him as well. I think he'd be awesome on the Mavericks, by the way. Playing alongside Luka and Kyrie. His jumping ability. Of course, it might probably make Derek plain mode. What's his name? I'll pull up his name in a sec. He could be in a situation where he could be on a contending team with superstar talent that would be it would be amazing for him. Derrick Jones Jr. is the one I was thinking of. There was Derek Lively, and I was thinking, no, Derek Lively is a rookie, so I ended up mixing that up. But Derrick Jones Jr., he might probably become expendable with someone like Miles Bridges coming over to the Mavericks, and he'll probably contend for a starting spot straight away as well. So this is a team who's on the selling side, I think, on this trade market, to try to relieve themselves of cap space, acquire more draft picks, and try to put something around LaMelo Ball and Brandon Miller and maybe Mark Williams, who's a promising center, and Nick Richards, with them, just trying to make some headway. Over the last few years, the Charlotte Hornets have been dismal in their competitiveness, not making the playoffs for so many years. They traded, the heart and soul of the team in Kemba Walker to the Boston Celtics, and then of course, his career went by the wayside. He's in the EuroLeague right now, and he's just not really doing good himself. His downward spiral after being with the Celtics, has been sad to see. But the Charlotte Hornets and their existence in the NBA has been sad to see. And this brings me to my next point. which I think is something that is going a little bit under the radar for the Charlotte Hornets, who were owned, of course, like I said, by Michael Jordan. I mentioned his name with the Charlotte Hornets in the last episode. And I think it's a bit difficult on the Charlotte Hornets' parts to kind of escape any conversation about accountability. Because this is a team over the last 6-7 years who have just lived in the lottery, having seven, I believe it is, seven lottery, not lottery, but first round picks, in the NBA draft the last 7 years. And it's been, bad record amongst bad record, non-competitive seasons over non-competitive seasons. And it's just troubling for a team like this to be in this mired state of futility as they have over the last few years. Mitch Kupchak, of course, came in and he was tabbed as the general manager of this team after the team released Rich Cho, who was a previous GM. And Michael Jordan, of course, wanted to bring in someone who had that championship experience and someone who could craft a team and a roster that would make this team competitive. And it just hasn't been that way so far. And one might say, well, Jordan was the one who was in charge. No one could really point that finger at him anymore, releasing and relinquishing his majority stake in the Charlotte Hornets and passing it on. And of course, it only happened earlier on in this season. The Board of Governors approved the sale of the Charlotte Hornets earlier this year. And, he's no longer in that position. And one would like to probably think, based on how Brandon Miller has played, the last decision Michael Jordan made for the Charlotte Hornets in terms of, or not him making it specifically, but maybe him giving his stamp of approval in terms of drafting Brandon Miller was probably the last best thing he's done for this franchise. And it's unfortunate for executive MJ. We're not going to touch his playing record, his playing career, or anything like that. But the Charlotte Hornets in his ownership has been dismal, and it looks like it's kind of going in that direction again, at least maybe for the foreseeable, until guys like Brandon Miller and, hopefully LaMelo Ball actually wants to stay with this team, because I wouldn't be surprised if he gets really frustrated and moves off. We had Terry Rozier, who moved on to the Miami Heat, and he said like the culture and the DNA of that team is just based around losing for the Miami Heat and losing for the Charlotte Hornets are two different things, where it felt like, they're becoming very accustomed to and just passing off losses as it's just another day. Whereas for the Miami Heat, they don't tolerate losing, or they don't want to lose. They're trying their best not to lose. And there's just this dog-hearted atmosphere and attitude about, losses. You have a guy like Jimmy Butler leading this squad and being the main person on that team. And you got to expect that, they're just not going to be happy with losses coming the way that they have been over the last couple of weeks, let's say. But, it's a team that has championship aspirations, unlike the Charlotte Hornets. And yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Charlotte Hornets over the next couple of seasons. But this, for me, bringing this up right now, it was just me wanting to kind of point out the bright spark that Brandon Miller has been to their season. It's really kind of, you watch the Charlotte Hornets now on League Pass to see what Brandon Miller is going to do. Not necessarily for highlight plays, although he's had quite a few of those over the last few games, dunking on guys, alley-oop plays, defensive plays, step-back jumpers after crossovers and all that sort of stuff. And he's been, a highlight staple over the last couple of weeks, over these last 12 games, like I mentioned. And they've been 3-19 over the for the start of the calendar year. And it's disappointing, but Brandon Miller, I believe, and hopefully when LaMelo Ball comes back, and if Miles Bridges is in this uniform next week, he will be in a situation where, they will be exciting to watch, but probably the losses will just continue to come, and it's going to be disappointing, but it is what it is. So that's topic number 2 of this episode. Like I said, we're whizzing past in this episode this time. The last episode, of course, doing the power rankings. I believe, there's just so much to say, and, so many things you want to point out based on what the rankings are and wanted to kind of give you a rationale. So kind of extended a bit longer, but let me not ramble on air about that. We're into a new episode and we're into topic number 3 right now. We were past our first 2 topics of flying colors, and the third one basically here for this main recording of the Baseline to Baseline video podcast is Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard. This is a guy who's missed 48% of his games over the last 4 seasons, or the last 4 seasons. And he has been in and out of the lineup. Many people consider him the poster boy for load management. And he has played, to this point, 45 games out of 49 played. Kawhi Leonard. Let me do something here really quickly to just kind of show you how remarkable that is for Kawhi Leonard, right? So this season, 45 games out of 49, like I mentioned. Last season, at game 49, when they came to the 49th game, he had only played 24 games. The season before that, 2021 to 2022, he didn't play the entire season, of course, with his knee injuries and just managing his body to try to get back to a point of health, which is good to see that he's in right now. The season before that, 2020 to 2021, he played 40 or 49 games, which is cool. He had a relatively good season there, but then he only played a few more games after that. Where he played only I think it was 52 games. I think he played that season. I need to check that. I'll put a correction if I'm wrong there. But the 2020-21 season, it was a really good point to that time where he played 40 of those 49 games. And in the 2019 to 2020 season, the COVID season, he had played 37 of the 49 games that the Clippers had played. And that's the first season he joined the Clippers, right? So for him to have only missed 4 games to this point is remarkable. The least amount of games he had played, he had missed to this point was in 2020-2021 when he missed only 9 games, which is great. So Kawhi Leonard being healthy, we could see what the outcome of that is. We have a Clippers team who are first in the West right now. Can we actually say that, we are almost 50 games into the NBA season and the Clippers are first in the West? This is not like the first couple of weeks of the season where, teams are up and down and, teams that you don't expect to be competing like was it last year? At one point, 2-3 weeks into the season, the Jazz were first in the West. This is not this part of the season. We are past halfway mark. We've passed 41 scheduled games out of 82. We are 49 games in, and the Clippers are first in the West. By far, this is probably the best stretch in the franchise's history, considering, how they played this year so far, with Kawhi Leonard being in the lineup, averaging 24.4 points per game, 6.3 assists, 3.7 6.3 rebounds, 3.7 assists, shooting with his shooting splits of 53% and 46% from the 3-point range. That's a career high, easily, for Kawhi Leonard. And of course, you have someone like James Harden coming in to this team early on in the season, and that kind of just creates a lot of open floor space for a guy like Kawhi Leonard, who's enjoying a shooting year for the ages for him, shooting 46% from 3-point range, career high, like I mentioned. Now, Kawhi Leonard, let's look a little more into some stats here, and everything's not memorized. I have my piece of paper here, but it's something to really kind of be made note of, and it's very noteworthy for the Clippers. Over the last, not over the last, when Kawhi Leonard scores at least 30 points this season, the Clippers are 10-3. 13 games where that's happened, they're 10-3. When Kawhi Leonard scores at least 20 points, the Los Angeles Clippers are 25-8. So out of 33 games, they've won 25. That's the impact of having a healthy Kawhi Leonard on your team. Of course, you had Paul George, who had been battling his injuries and his injury demons as well. But when you have someone like Kawhi Leonard, who is as talented, and many people have said, and made many comparisons, and I have as well, looking at Kawhi Leonard, you kind of see some kind of little glimpses of Michael Jordan, of how he moves on the court. Sometimes, we always like to say, or I always like to say, when you kind of make that comparison with Kawhi Leonard and Michael Jordan, we're speaking like 96, 97, 98 Jordan, not athletic, up in the air, rim running Michael Jordan. We're talking about older Michael Jordan with his fadeaways and his Statue of Liberty dunks, and just making efficient plays. We're not talking athletic, super athletic Michael Jordan here. We're talking about older Michael Jordan. And Kawhi Leonard really looks, when you look at him play, you see a lot of those similarities. You could kind of, for those who are old enough to remember Michael Jordan playing, who might be watching this podcast, you could just see similarities. Look for any mixtape on YouTube where you kind of see those similarities of those two players side by side, and it's basically the same sort of thing. So having him in there in the lineup has kind of been an absolute boost for this team. And of course, you kind of have to give credit a lot to James Harden as well. He came in, the team lost five straight games. It was, I think, when he started with the Clippers. And just as we're seeing with, although we're talking player and coach here, there's an adjustment period. Teams need to get used to each other, and that needs to happen for the team to kind of start to progress. But they lost those 5 games earlier on, and now we are in a situation where James Harden seems like he's clicking, and when he has over 10 assists in a game, also the Clippers are 16-2. I'd like to kind of shout out or kind of give a hat tip to Brian Windows, who kind of mentioned this stat on a First Take a couple of days ago or yesterday, whenever it was. And yeah, the 16-2 when James Harden has at least 10 assists. And if you listen to my last podcast or video podcast, last episode of this show, I mentioned, James Harden is playing with the lowest usage rate of his career, or competing with his lowest usage rate at 20.3% for his career. And he's been amazing, to this point in terms of how he's been able to settle into this hearing a buzzer. I'm hoping. Let me just, this is kind of one of the things when you have a bit of a studio at home. I'm hearing a buzzer. I'm hoping my house is not burning down. Hold a second. I'll be right back. Okay, false alarm. It's probably a car outside with an alarm buzzing. My house is safe. I'm not going to burn down. Right. So yeah. So lost my train of thought, but of course it's James Harden we're speaking about and his impact, and how that kind of just opens up the floor with his shooting ability, his playmaking ability, to guys like Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, like we see here. The Clippers' offensive rating, right, for the entire team since, let's say, mid-December, December 16th, thereabouts, they've been first in the NBA, right? And first in the NBA with their offensive rating, shooting about, or scoring at least about 127 points per 100 possessions. And they have just continued on this remarkable trajectory, like I said, and 20-5 over the last game since December 16, and that has shot them up the charts. At one point before James Harden had come into the team, or just around when they were losing those games with him, they were, I think, out of the playing picture, and now they're at first in the West based on the production of their superstars, all the guys that they have, and Ty Lue, of course, being able to figure it out, put these guys together, have Russell Westbrook coming off the bench, and like Brian Windhorst said as well, I'll quote him as well, playing no agenda basketball. These are guys who are not coming here to try to prove any sort of points anymore. James Harden does have a point to prove. Let's not get that twisted, because he has a playoff record and a playoff performances that have kind of been good in certain spots, but when it's time to close, he hasn't really done what he's supposed to do. But now he's with a team where, some of that offensive burden is off his back. He has, Michael Jordan-esque Kawhi Leonard to kind of lean on, Paul George, who is a remarkable two-way player in this league, and even Russell Westbrook coming off the bench, who could spell for him every now and then if he's not doing, as great in a game. And Russell Westbrook, we saw what he did in the playoffs last year. He was remarkable in the absence of Kawhi Leonard and, trying his best to really push the team. Of course, they fell short, but, he just found a home with the Los Angeles Clippers. So Kawhi Leonard, he's been amazing to see over the last 4 seasons, the past 4 seasons, not inclusive of this season. Like I said, the guy has missed 48% of his games. That's definitely the tops for many guys in the league over the last couple of years. And it's amazing to see him be able to hold his position in health. And if he could continue in that vein, the Clippers will be the team that everyone needs to contend with, right? So we speak about the Boston Celtics. Of course, the Boston Celtics were my choice to win it all. But like I said, I caveated it with, of course, I'm going to put a caveat to that. If they don't make another trade to kind of fortify their bench, I think they're going to be in trouble. Now, it came out a little earlier on today that they are looking at someone like Kelly Olynyk from the Utah Jazz, who's a very good, role-playing guy, center, who could rebound a little bit, could shoot the three, and kind of give them a little boost off the bench. Chris Dunn from Utah as well, and Fontecchio, I believe his name is, one of their backup centers as well. So, they're looking at an opportunity to fortify their center position, which is one of the things I said they definitely need to do. Of course, there are better options, I think, out there, but, Danny Ainge, who is the GM for the Utah Jazz, still has a bit of a love affair with the Celtics, and they're having a little bit of a conversation about trading assets potentially or helping with assets. And if even if they could do a trade just like that, it's not really one of the names that I thought that they'll go after, but I think that will be a lot better, of a help to the Celtics than them just going into the playoffs just as they are right now. Right. So it's the Clippers right now in the West who I believe are up there with the Denver Nuggets. Like I said, no disrespect to the Minnesota Timberwolves, no disrespect to the Oklahoma City Thunder. I don't see them, those two teams specifically, being able to beat a team like the Denver Nuggets, of course, the reigning champs, right? The only other team I believe who could really put the scare in Denver is the Los Angeles Clippers. I paused there for a little bit because I was thinking about what the Lakers did last year, but we saw what happened with them with the sweep, right? But those guys have a team. They have a team, but they're just not performing for whatever reasons. And, that's a topic of a discussion for another day. The Lakers get enough, enough airtime. We're not going to talk about them right now. But, the Clippers, I believe, are the team that are putting the whole league on notice. Boston Celtics over in the East, you guys better watch out. Denver in the West, for your championship contending or repeat aspirations, the Clippers are coming, and they have enough right now in terms of depth. They have loads of centers. You have Ivica Zubac, who's coming back from injury. You have Daniel Tice. You have Mason Plumlee, who is an underrated center who does quite a lot, blocks, rebounds, could put the ball in the hole when you need him to, and has kind of built a really good career for himself. They have wing players, Terrence Mann, Norman Powell. Of course, you have guys like Russell Westbrook, and of course the superstars on this team that I mentioned earlier on. And it's going to be really interesting to see how the Clippers could continue the season, and if they could stay healthy. Look out, NBA, and like I'll be happy to predict a Clippers Boston finals potentially, if they could stay healthy, because the way the Clippers are playing right now behind Kawhi Leonard, and knowing that you have Paul George just lurking on the team as well, who could kind of go off for 40 if he made up his mind. James Harden, as we saw last postseason, who could just come up in a game and put up 45 if he wanted to as well. Russell Westbrook missed a triple-double himself. Of course, he doesn't get many opportunities to do that now, but these guys have enough weapons on that team and a coach in Tyronn Lue that could take them really, really far. So look out for the Clippers as well. They're definitely ones I wanted to shine some spotlight on, behind the health and the healthy knees of Kawhi Leonard. Right, so these are the topics I wanted to discuss today. But of course, we have two lovely other sections that we want to get to. I debuted one last week, which I like to call the Bétiz of the week. There's certain things that I watched over the couple of days since my last recording. I wanted to call out a few things. One or two that I've kind of discussed already or I've mentioned in the little talks that we've had so far. We getting straight into Bétiz of the week. Right, so number one, new Bétiz of the week. Like I said, we did with the last episode. You're going to put up a Twitter poll, and you could kind of let me know what your thoughts are on, what has been your most nonsensical topic from the list that I'm going to provide. The ones that you think are the most troubling, or the most worrying, or the most Bétiz, in this list that I'm going to provide. So number one, Celtics, Boston Celtics. We had a game last week, Thursday, February 1st, where they played the Los Angeles Lakers, who had no LeBron James, no Anthony Davis, and they got touched by Austin Reeves. Just look at the highlights here right now. Look, Austin Reeves' hair is just looking like, a man on fire. He was looking like, who could I even say? He was looking like Kobe Bryant for a second there, hitting the threes, getting into the zone, doing all sorts of things that he was doing, being able to put up 32 points on 7 of 10 shooting from 3-point range, 10 of 18 from the field, right? So the Boston Celtics were absolutely nonsense last week, in a game like that they should not have dropped. Right, they believed maybe they got the word early on that maybe AD and LeBron were not going to play, and then they played down to the competition that they thought, these guys are not going to be as good, and they just started to mess up. The Bétiz part of this for me, for the Boston Celtics, is 3-point shooting. Right, they shot 16 of 48 from 3-point range against the Los Angeles Lakers. And one of the things I've said on Sportsmax over the last couple of seasons in the postseason, whenever I've done postseason analysis, or as we're going towards the finals, the Boston Celtics have a magic number when it comes to turnovers, and it probably maybe applies for most teams in the NBA as well. But once they reach 15 turnovers, and they couple that with bad shooting, it's not going to be a night they're going to win. Now, of course, they're still first in the East. They're still championship contenders. They still have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, Andrew Holiday, and Kristaps Porzingis, and Mr. Reliable Al Horford. But they have shown over the last 2-3 postseasons now that they have a propensity to get very lazy and settle for 3-point shots, right? And we saw what that happened to them last week, Thursday, and that just fit the mold. Now, of course, they're not playing, against LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and the team's best at that moment, but we've seen the Celtics do this to themselves, where they're the ones shooting themselves in the foot. And basically, they will be the ones to take themselves out of contention based on the way they play and based on the way they tend to put themselves in holes and kind of look to make 3-point shooting be what get them out, rather than using their athleticism, using their size, using their strength, using their smarts, and this is something that has affected them multiple times, right? So they were horrible against the Lakers, who shot 19 of 36 from 3-point range themselves. And they're for the season, they are first in 3-point attempts in the league. Granted, they're fifth in percentage, shooting as a team 37.9%, almost 38%. They're just in a situation where they just like to rely on threes. And this is one of the situations and one of the things I'm going to talk about maybe a little more about the Celtics. So I've been on this number one topic for Bétiz for too long now. We're going to talk about the Celtics in its own devoted episode in a few episodes down the line. But Bétiz number one, Boston Celtics. Sort yourselves out. The shooting, 3-point shooting, we need to see that. Use your skills. Bétiz number two. This is me this is me being a bit envious of NBA players, right? The NBA players over the last couple of weeks have started to complain. 65 games are too much. This 65 game rule is ridiculous. Tyrese Halliburton came out and like, this is ridiculous. We shouldn't need to do this. We had Joel Embiid coming out and trying to force himself so he could meet the player participation guidelines and meet 65 games, and now he's injured. Draymond Green came out and said it himself, like, this rule is ridiculous. NBA players, come on, man. You guys earn quite a lot of money. And when we think about the history of the game, and many people don't like to talk about the history of the game, they think, the past is the past and the old players were, crappy and they're not as good as the players now and all that sort of stuff. NBA players now, as are all the youth of the world today, basically, are afforded the opportunity to have a lot more at their disposal, right? You have supreme medical care, medical, staff on deck, private charter planes. You don't have to wait for anything. Anything you want is at your disposal as teams. You're getting paid, what, 40, 50, 30, 40, 50, $60 million a year on a contract, right? And you guys are upset because we as fans and the media are saying that, no, you guys need to be out there. You can't be just load managing and playing that you need to take rest when you're actually not injured, right? So this is, and I think most analysts have said it on TV the last couple of days, where you guys collectively bargained this. You guys negotiated this yourselves. The Player Association were a key stakeholder at the table when this rule was instituted. You agreed to it. 65 games seemed okay there until it started to hurt your pockets, or you started to see it hurt your pockets. Now, Tyrese Halliburton, of course, was the first person to kind of come out and really talk badly about it, because he is one who stands to lose quite a lot of money. I think it's been reported at least about $40 million on his next contract, because he potentially is out of the running to be on one of the all NBA teams, which takes him out of the running to have a Supermax contract, right? So of course it's going to hurt him, because he's not going to be there, and he's going to be missing $40 million worth of money on already a very lucrative contract that he might sign even without the $40 million. Give me just $1 million of that and I'll be really happy. And you guys are crying because we want to see you on the court more, which is your job. Well, you're supposed to be taking care of your body a lot more, right? These guys don't train like the old guys. They probably don't focus as much as what the old guys used to. I think, Charles Barkley, one of the guys, rattled off the average amount of games, or I think it was on first take actually, rattled off the amount of games that guys averaged, over their playing careers per season, where I think it was Michael Jordan played maybe 78 games every year, playing 82 games multiple times. Karl Malone, Charles Barkley, David Robinson, all these guys played north of 60, 70 games a year, unless they were really, really injured, right? And these guys here now, we spoke about Kawhi Leonard and being out of the lineup quite a lot. Of course, there are legitimate injuries, but if you're not there, and or you seem to, you guys be taking habits of sitting out nights for rest when you're not injured, you're going to get some backlash for that. So that's nonsense. Absolute ridiculousness. These NBA players crying about 65 games when you should actually be on the court. That's ridiculous. That's Bétiz. Bétiz number 2. Right? Number 3, the state of the Charlotte Hornets. I'm not going to stay too long on this because I've called it out already in the Brandon Miller section of this video. But I believe, the Charlotte Hornets really need to kind of take a really good look in the mirror and start thinking about accountability. Of course, you want accountability from all your players, you want accountability from your coaches, and all those sorts of things. And I think the Charlotte Hornets right now have not really done a really good job over the last 6-7 years. Mitch Kupchak as GM, you guys have a really horrible record, with you as in charge, and loads of first rounders, you're in a selling position in the trading market once again, because there's nothing that you can do to actually improve your team, basically. And I think the Charlotte Hornets just, I'm not going to really put them in the situation as the Detroit Pistons. The Pistons and their issues deserve their own, shout out, like I did last episode. But the Charlotte Hornets, I think, as a franchise as well, definitely need a good spanking. Like we say in the Caribbean, the Charlotte Hornets need licks. They need somebody coming in a belt and beating all of them, because you can't understand why, a team like this, who were once owned by the greatest ever, not be able to have, an ability to be in the playoffs and be at least a 500 team. They're 10-39 right now. And that to me is a next set of Bétiz, a next set of nonsense. And of course, they have their bright sparks like Brandon Miller, LaMelo Ball when he's actually playing, and Miles Bridges, who might not be on this team very soon. But they're I wanted to call out them out this last game, this last time, because I don't think it's been very disappointing what they've been this season as well, coming into a new season. So those are my Bétiz of the week contenders. We have the Boston Celtics and their putrid shooting performance against the Los Angeles Lakers. Secondly, the NBA players as a whole complaining about the 65 game player participation rule. I believe that's absolute nonsense, foolishness, ridiculousness. Just don't do it, guys. Don't make yourself look as bad as you already do. And number three, of course, the Charlotte Hornets, who are, they live in the lottery and have, been nursing quite a lot of injuries. And Terry Rozier, like I said, just recently said, they have a DNA of losing, our culture of losing, which is not great, because when you have someone saying about you have a culture of losing, you got to look to your ownership and your front office. And Michael Jordan and Mitch Kupchak, I'm looking directly at you for that, Bétiz. That's on you all right? So that's Bétiz of the week. So let me know what you think about those, and what you think was the worst out of those situations. And finally, the footnote section. We're going to do a little bit of another little sneaker spotlight on a shoe, shoes that I think are really cool, and stories associated with shoes. And of course, we've spoken a little bit about the Los Angeles Clippers, and I want to highlight a signature athlete called Paul George, who had a very successful, a widely successful sneaker line with Nike, going up to six editions of his shoes. And it seems like Nike has just stopped. It seems like 6 is the magic number. Penny Hardaway, the Penny 6, which kind of came out after he retired. Yes, true. Scottie Pippen, Pippen 6, stopped at that point of the line as well. But for a player who's had a widely successful signature line, who's not injured, who's not retired, for them to stop at their 6th edition is a bit surprising. But Nike decided to halt the PG series, and I have in hand here a pair of PG3s. These are the only PGs that I own. But this was a shoe. This is the NASA edition that was meant to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Apollo landing on the moon. And there's a lovely little quote here from Paul George, and I thought that was probably one of the most outstanding features of the shoe, to be able to incorporate a quote into the design of the shoe. And it says here, "Don't tell me the sky's the limit when there are footprints on the moon," right? And this is the NASA version of it. You could see the Apollo crest of the Apollo 11 missions to the moon. And the shoe is like fully reflective. Of course, we have some little lighting stuff going on here, but it's a fully reflective upper, to the point where when it's actually a bit reflective, it looks like the surface of the moon. Because of how the mesh overlays on the 3M, it kind of looks like all of the little indentations on the moon, sort of thing. And this was an amazing shoe, very comfortable, very popular in the league when it came out in 2019. And we saw the PG6 come out in 2022. And since then, there's not been any update to the line. And found out recently from Nick DePaula, who is one of the NBA insiders for sneaker contracts and everything. And he said in his mailbag that, yeah, they've halted the line for PG And similarly to what they have done with Carmelo Anthony and Chris Paul, you're not seeing any new editions of their shoes when they were playing as well. And they've done the same with Paul George, making way for Ja Morant and Devin Booker, who have their own signature shoes and who are popular in their respects as well. But it's really interesting to see that, they've decided to not continue the Paul George line. For me, as a sneakerhead, someone who's kind of followed the sneaker game, I'd say really from the 90s thereabout. Nobody could replace Penny Hardaway in the Nike Signature Series, but it felt like in this era right now of the signature athletes, LeBron, KD, Kyrie when he was with the line, Paul George kind of he occupied that space like Penny to me. His shoes were very slick, very comfortable, good looking shoes, really cool additions, very popular with the players, and they've just halted him for a really popular shoe. So here's a look at the back of them. We have the NASA tag at the back here, and this one is what, like, just says PG, and I suppose like what it looks like, maybe some moon terrain sort of thing. His PG logo at the back here as well, and like I said, the fully reflective silver upper PG right here on the top at the front of the logo on the toe box here as well on the rubber. And yeah, it's sad to see that Nike kind of halted his line, and he's now just, of course, before Paul George became a signature athlete, he was big with Kobe Bryant. He wore only Kobe shoes, and that's what you see Paul George doing right now. He's probably going to be one of the main guys, just like DeMar DeRozan, repping the Kobe brand. And if there were to be a Kobe brand later down the line, like a Team Kobe, he'd probably be headlining with DeMar DeRozan. So that's the PG3 out of 6 signature shoes, and that's my sneaker footnote. And RIP to Paul George and his sneaker line. Unfortunate, but that's what it is. So, this is where I wrap up on this episode of Baseline to Baseline today. I'd like to thank you for watching. And of course, just like you've seen with the episode that has been uploaded, last episode 13 on YouTube, you're going to have these little section breaks in there so you can kind of just jump into those sections. But like and subscribe to the page if you like this, like I say. Participate in the Twitter poll, of the Bétiz of the week. Like I said, the Celtics, the players complaining about the 65 games, and the Charlotte Hornets will be this week's edition. Who you got as well. This is Super Bowl week. I have my 49ers shit. I had to mention that at the start of the show. Didn't mention it. I'm a big fan of underdogs, and guys, not many people expecting things from kind of being successful. That's kind of the space that I think I occupy, and I'd like to see Brock Purdy win this Super Bowl championship coming up on Sunday. Of course, when this comes out, it will be the week afterwards. So maybe it would be great to see that this jersey selection from me kind of holds true with, Brock Purdy winning his Super Bowl, first ever appearance against the mighty and, much loved Patrick Mahomes. All right, guys, this is where I sign out. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe. And hopefully I'll see you soon in the next episode where I'm probably going to have a really lovely guest on, which is great. All right, see you soon.